So don't worry about furiously taking notes. You'll always be able to come back and re-watch this and pause and replay on certain parts that you might have missed. And finally, we're going to, for the sake of covering a lot of ground, we're going to not be perfecting photographs here. It's more worrying about the concept and the technique that goes into it. And then you can further refine that based on your specific product, or if you like using any kind of editing apps and stuff in post. So we won't be doing any editing here. I'm going to show you conceptually how to take the best photograph with the minimal amount of equipment, and then you guys can further refine that around your own products in your own store. So again, any questions, throw them in the Q&A. I've got my awesome partner and assistant Julio here behind the scenes, and he is going to be monitoring the Q&A and pitching those over at me. So this is a team effort here. So any questions, you can go ahead and throw them in there. And I love how helpful everyone is in the chat. If you're not seeing video, toggle the little view button up top, and that'll go ahead and get you squared away there. So without further ado, let me go ahead and grab some of our tools. And I just want to go into quick tips and tools of what you should have in your product photography studio, whether that's an actual studio or working out of your house or apartment. All right. So Julio, I don't know with camera angle, you might have to go a little higher on the sticks or what you need to do here, but we're gonna try to cover some of these smaller products here really quickly. So, and if the camera goes blurry occasionally, that is the autofocus trying to find me. So as I'm moving 1,000,000 miles an hour all over the room, the focus is going to be trying to catch me. So occasionally the video might go a little bit blurrier. All right, so Julio's going to come in really quickly on this. I've got a broad selection of stuff in here I want to go over. Now, depending on what kind of photography you're doing, there's a bunch of different tools that you might need, but there's some basic stuff that you should have in your kit all the time, because when you need it, you're going to need it right away, and it's nice to have there. So first off, clear tape. Clear tape is great. It's going to work for whether we're working with paper for a background or reflectors, or we just need to hold down a piece of fabric or a piece of thread or something like that on our products. Having clear tape is important. Also have double-sided tape laying around. Double-sided tape is great, especially if we're doing flats or anything or dealing with fabrics, because I can get in between the fabric and stick things down so fabrics aren't bunching up or bulking anywhere. At the same time, if I'm trying to hang things, I can have this and I can double tape something to the wall. So for example, we have a nice holiday wreath that we're going to be photographing. I could use the double-sided tape to keep it from flopping around and have it positioned. So double-sided tape and clear tape are going to be extremely important. I recommend having 1 billion pins on set. We're going to be working with poster board and foam core. And the foam core, we're going to use a lot of these little pins to kind of tack down fabrics. So the edges of shirts, if you're doing a flat lay or you're working with textiles, you're going to use a lot of pins to stretch the fabrics out so they look fully formed and they fit properly on the foam core before we photograph them. So these are all little things that just help and kind of become invisible, but helping make your products look their best. Because styling is one of the most important things. Styling is almost as important as the photography and the lighting itself. All right, fishing line. Fishing line is super important, especially if we're hanging things, or if you're just photographing handbags and you want to make sure the handle of the handbag is sitting up instead of flopping over. Having fishing line on set is great. If you aren't an angler or a regular fisher person out there, I'd recommend going into the fishing store or online and getting 10-pound test is kind of how they describe it. The 10-pound test is a thinner line, and you want to make sure you get the clear fishing line, not one of the greens or the blues, because that will show up in your photographs. So get clear 10 or 12-pound test fishing line. So that's the specifics on that. String is nice to have if you ever need it for hanging anything. Again, I've just got more pins. These are clear ones. They've got a bigger head on them, so they're easier to grip, but those might show up in your photographs. Scissors, always have a scissors on hand. If you've got a product and it's got some, just like little things sticking out, you can always trim it down or trimming your paper and your poster board to fit. A-clamps are extremely important, okay? A-clamps come in super handy for clamping things up, hanging things, but at the same time, they also work for like reflectors. So say I've got this nice handy silver reflector I made here, and I need to prop this up. Well, it's going to flop over. I just use my A-clamp, clamp it onto the bottom like that, and now all of a sudden I've got a nice standing reflector for when I want to go ahead and photograph my products and I get that light to bounce back in there. So that's just a quick look at what's in my toolkit. Depending on the kind of products that you photograph, you might have some other thing. There's a sticky tack. If you go into the craft section of a store, it's like Play-Doh, but doesn't leave a residue. And that's absolutely wonderful for propping up small products. So say this was like a jewelry case that I was selling, and I don't want it to lay flat like that. I would go ahead and use the ball of sticky tack to prop it up and get it to stick and have like a perfect angle there. So sticky tack is something I don't have on my board today, but should definitely be in your kit. So that is kind of a quick overview of all the little tips and tools that we're going to be using here. The fishing line we're going to use photographing the hanging products for sure. Any kind of command strips or double-sided tape, pins, all that standard stuff. Only costs a couple bucks. Buy it once, put it in a little box, have it at your house. You're good to go. So I'm going to put these aside really quickly. All right. Before we get into talking about anything else, I want to talk about our lighting. Well, actually, take that back. Let's talk about our camera. Okay, so in this case, like I said, I'm using the iPhone 12. Got it right there. And what I've got it on is two parts of this apparatus going on here. One, ignore this. This is so that I can do the live stream via HDMI out so you can see what my camera sees. But the two parts of this is the tripod I've got in my hand, and then this little grip case right here. The little grip case comes in super handy because it's got multiple little screw holes that allow me to either screw this onto a light stand or onto a tripod like this. Now, for your photography, one of the big investments I really don't think you can get away without is some kind of stability for your camera. So I definitely recommend spending a couple bucks and getting a tripod. You can find really affordable ones online. I would get a travel tripod because the travel tripods break down a lot smaller. This tripod, for example, can go up to 6 feet tall, but when it's collapsed in on itself, it comes in a bag that's only about that big. So two benefits there. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It's usually cheaper. And at the same time, it's small enough where I have this one on the ground, for example, so I can get a nice shot going into this background. But at the same time with this, I can also put this small enough that I can actually have the tripod sitting on the table itself. Now, if you invest in like a big full-size tripod, there's no way you'd be able to get that onto a table or onto a chair and get the smaller, tighter shots that you need to. So I like finding a travel tripod. And then Julio is actually going to link a link to one of these little expanders there that allows you to clip your iPhone onto a device like a tripod or something like that. So they're really, really cost efficient. You can find them for a couple bucks online. Julio's probably going to put some links in there to some of the products as we're going throughout. But the reason I recommend you invest in a tripod versus just hand-holding stuff is because you're going to want consistency in your imagery. So there's a reason why certain brands work the world over, okay? So I don't know where your stance is on McDonald's or Starbucks, but those are two big brands that have tons of stores everywhere in the world. And they're successful in different markets and different cultures and everywhere in the world. For one of the big reasons being repeatability. You know what you're going to get when you walk into a Starbucks, okay? They have the same basic coffees, the same way, served the same way, the stores feel the same way everywhere you go in the country or everywhere you go in the world, essentially. So that consistency is part of their brand, okay? At the same time, too, it's with McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's might have dishes that are more local if you go to different countries, but for the most part, you walk into any McDonald's, you know what you're going to get, so you have that familiarity. Now, when it comes to e-commerce and your brand online, you need to really quickly communicate that professionalism. And one way is having good-looking photos, but having consistent photos. So if I were to go to a store and I wanted to buy a shirt or a handbag or whatever it is, and I'm scrolling through their list of products, and every single photo was different, it looks like it was taken by a different person at a different time of day in a different location, that doesn't really give me that kind of repeatability or that kind of structure that I'm looking for that would make me feel confident that the product I bought would look the same as the other one and the other one. See what I'm saying? So as part of your branding, you want to have that consistency. So by having a tripod, I'm able to lock down my camera position, okay? And then after you see this workshop, we're going to be able to get perfect lighting. And once this is all set, I'm just going to have my lighting here set up, my camera in a consistent position, and then I can just grab my different products, drop one in, take the picture. Swap the next one in, take the picture. And now I've got consistency. Now every single shot has the product is the same size in the frame. It's at the same angle. It's got the same lighting. Hopefully you do the same post-production. And now you have a clean, uniform storefront. So people go in there and it instills confidence because every one of your products looks polished, professionally photographed, and consistent. And that consistency builds that, that brand comfortability and that brand loyalty, essentially. So definitely what I want to talk about there. So figure out what you can do. One thing you can do here is just use a regular tripod, actually, and just get like a little ball head attachment on top of that. Or if you don't have one of these tripods laying around, or you want to invest in an actual, light stand, you can invest in a tripod itself. But if you don't have the money or don't have a fancy tripod, but you do have a couple of kit light stands that you've maybe purchased laying around, go ahead and get a little ball head attachment, and you can screw it on top of that. And Julio, if you can't find the link to that, don't worry about it too much. I'd rather see the feed come through. So we've got that squared away. So that brand consistency and having the same uniform position, angle, focal length, and composition is super important. Now let's talk about the lighting, because the second most important thing is lighting, and I know that a lot of people struggle with that. I got a question about what is that ball head. So let me give you an example of that. Can you punch in and take a look at this thing? So this right here, once that gets focused, there we go, is a ball head. What it is, it's kind of like the tripod head that you have here. It's very similar to the head of the tripod. And what it does is it just gives you a bunch of control over the positioning of it. So there's a little tension knob over here on the side, and I can unlock that, okay? And then there's a ball in here, like a hip joint, just like you would have in your shoulders or your hips, and it moves around at all different angles. So what I can do, let me show you how to fully assemble this. I'll bring this over. So in a pinch, say that you're just starting out and you don't have a tripod, but you've been able to find one of these for like $2 online. This is the little tension thing I was talking about. If you want to punch in here a little bit, Julio, you can pick up one of these ball heads. This one is made by Manfrotto. So if you're on Google, look for a Manfrotto, F-R-O-T-T-O ball head. Okay, and then one of these little cheapy adapters for your iPhone, and you basically screw it onto the top here. Okay. Now you've got this adjustability, so you can have your phone aiming down, up, left, right, all over, all right? And then it's got a little thread here in the bottom that screws onto anything. So it can screw onto the top of a tripod like we've got here, or if you've got, just some cheapy light stands laying around that you got with like a light kit or an LED kit or something like that. These are very affordable, cheaper than a tripod even. You can just screw it on the top here. And there you go. Now I've made essentially a tripod for my iPhone in a pinch. And at the same time, if I want to remove this and I'm a little more advanced and maybe you've bought an LED or a strobe or something like that to help light your products, now I can use this as my light stand. So that little ball head allows you to really get some more versatility out of all the different stuff you may have laying around your home studio. So let me put this out of the way here. Next, we want to talk about lighting, okay? So this is going to be super important. How many of you are using lights now, like some kind of LED or strobe? Oh, good. They're helping you get the links in the chat, man, so you don't have to worry about it. No lights. Yes, a couple people are. Me. Perfect. So I'm going to show you both. I'm going to show you how to use window light, and I'm going to show you how to use LEDs or strobes, because essentially the concept's the same. Physics work the same. Light travels the same way. Quality of light's the same. So don't stress it if you don't have an LED or a strobe yet. If you've got access to a window light, you're going to be able to take great product photos no matter what. Now, if you find a place in your house that doesn't have light convenient to a table, I recommend just investing in a collapsible table. I have these folding tables all over the place that I can drag them around and do impromptu tabletop setups, so I don't have to drag my dining room table over to the window to get the best light every time. Okay, so what we're going to look at first is window light. Obviously, window light is going to be the most affordable option. Now, we're here shooting in Florida, so you can see how as soon as I open those blinds, immediately I'm blown out and overwhelmed. Now, this is why we're not going to want to necessarily shoot with just window light all of the time. So let me try to explain this first. So if you have direct window light coming in, it's going to create really crispy, harsh, dark shadows. If you think about going outside in the middle of the day, like 1 or 2 in the noon or 1 in the afternoon, and it's a bright sunny day, no clouds, and how unflattering does that light look, right? It makes everyone squint. There's dark shadows under the eyes, really hard shadows under the chin. That same kind of light coming through your window on a direct light day without any clouds is going to create really contrasty, crunchy shadows on your products, which you're not going to want most of the time. Most of the time, we want a softer, more natural looking light. So you can do a couple things. You can just say, hey, I'm only going to take my product photos on cloudy days. You could do that. Or if you've got a house or apartment with windows on multiple sides of the building, depending where you are in the world, here where I am in Florida right now or New York, southern facing exposures have indirect kind of softer light all day. So you might want to try to find a studio or a bedroom in your house or apartment that has a window that faces south if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, if you're in the US. And that's going to make it so that when I open my window, instead of a sunbeam firing directly in and creating this really harsh light, it's going to have a nice soft glow as if there were clouds outside, even if there aren't clouds. So what do you do if you can't find a southern facing window and you take your pictures during the day and it's bright sun? Well, that's when we want to turn our window into a giant softbox. So here's an example of what a softbox is. This is our softbox, okay? Essentially, you put a bright light, like an LED or a strobe, in this box, and then all the light comes out the front, shines this way. This white material here lets the light shine through, and what it does is it takes that tiny little light source and makes it big. Like this is 24 by 24 inches. Now the same thing too, when you're outside, the reason that light is harsh is because the sun is so far away, it's a little point light source with hard shadows. So to get soft light and soft shadows, we just basically have to take a little light source and make it bigger. It's as simple as that. So I could take, for example, this little light source, which is a little LED light. It's tiny, okay? And let's do a demo here. So we'll probably flip over to the iPhone so I can show the difference in these. Okay. Perfect. All right, want to flip to the phone? So here we have our mug right here, okay? When I just use this light, which is coming, and Julio will toggle back and forth here, I've got my light coming out of this tiny little light source. It's a little light source, which means it's got those really dark shadows. So if you go over there, you see how dark those shadows are? This doesn't make this look like a friendly, soft, inviting coffee mug. It makes it look very harsh. This isn't a good product photo. So what I could do is I could take this light source, okay, and if I shine it through my softbox here, all of a sudden I bring that in. Now look at how soft and beautiful that light is. It's soft light compared to hard light. So harsh light and harsh shadows, which is just the light, okay? And now I'm gonna go into my softbox and I'm gonna bring it in. Now look how nice and beautiful and soft that light looks. All we did was make the light source bigger by shining it through the softbox. So if you don't have lights, we can do the same thing with the window here. Let me show you exactly how. Okay, so let me turn this one off. Let me get rid of the softbox. If you have strobes and LEDs, feel free to use a softbox. If you don't, I recommend investing in one of these large reflectors. Okay, so let me pop this out here. This is a giant 4-foot by 6-foot reflector. All right, you can see the silver side over here does a great job of bouncing a lot of light. So whether from a window light or whatever, it'll bounce light back in. But I'm not actually going to use the reflector part of this. A lot of these reflectors are called 4-in-1 or 5-in-1 reflectors. And that's because they have a silver reflective side. They have a white reflective side. They have a gold reflective side. They even have this the black side back there. Do you think anyone know why the black side is there? It's really important for product photography. Just like you can add light with the reflector, the black side of the reflector subtracts light. It adds shadow is how I kind of look at it. So if you have a white product on a white background and you're using white light to illuminate it, it's just going to blow it out. It's going to blur and get all mushy and white, and you won't see where the product ends and the background begins. So if you take a black reflector and bring it in, I can add shadow. So someone said flagging, yep. So I can block a little bit of the light, and make sure the light is flagged off and goes where I want it to and where it doesn't want, or I don't want it to. Or I could use this to come in close and add shadow detail to my product. What we're going to do, so this is super versatile. So I definitely recommend spending a couple bucks, finding some kind of off-brand one of these and using it. What we're going to use it for the sake of product photography most of the time, though, is we're going to take this big diffusion and we're basically going to tack it up or lean it against our window. So just like we went ahead and used the softbox like this, we had the little light going through the big softbox and it softened the shadows. We're going to use that little harsh sun out there and shine it through this giant diffusion, and it's going to soften the light. So this right here is going to give me 2 harsh shadows. It's going to get those harsh, like dark, crunchy shadows. All I have to do then is get one of these. Again, these are like 30 or 40 bucks online, and put it over my window, kind of like putting a bed sheet over your window. And now this has become a 4-foot by 6-foot giant softbox. Now, if you've ever actually owned or tried to go to a photo studio, 4 foot by 6 foot soft boxes are very large, very expensive, and tough to use. So here, Julio's going to try to give you an example using this window light. It might be a little bit harder to see because we've got the room lights on, but I'll just give you an example. So there's that. So you want to go tight. Okay, and then here is with the diffusion. Now I've got the diffusion in there. And now we're back to, here's sunlight. Here's diffused light. Here's sun. Keep it on the iPhone for one. Yep, there you go. So there we go. There's our direct sunlight. Doesn't look great. Here is our soft light. Let that re-grab focus there. There's our soft light. Here's our harsh sunlight. See the difference? Now go back wide. All I was doing was putting the diffusion in between the window and taking it away from the window. So it makes a big difference. I mean, just like using an LED in a softbox, this little thing in a window is amazing. All of a sudden you turn your harsh window, that awful midday light, into like a very beautiful softbox quality light. So these are awesome. Okay, and I definitely recommend picking one up. At the same time, they're super easy to work with. I'm going to use, for example, a studio stand here. This is called a C stand or a Century stand. It's metal. It has an arm that allows me to hang things. Let me kill this window so we don't blind you all. There we go. So it's called a Century stand, okay? It's really handy to have in the studio. You can pick one up for about $100 US. It's called a C stand for short. So C as in cat, stand. And you can pick them up for about $100 on Amazon, really cost efficient. What I love about them is their versatility. So I can hang my fishing line off of this and hang products. I could have a handbag with fishing line clipped here, floating to get a nice, beautiful hanging shot. I could hang hangers and clothes on here if I wanted to. We're going to photograph the garland on this. I could put my light on this, so I have my light up and shining down on my product. A lot of versatility here. What I'm going to use it for, though, is I'm just going to go ahead and use it as a nice big reflector holder here. So I'm just going to be able to bring this up and over. And I'm going to just use a couple clamps. There we go on one side. I'll turn around so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. Cool, there we go. So now I can move this around. And you don't have to worry about the products, Julio. We'll get the links later. I just want to be able to see the screen for the most part. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so now I can position this anywhere I want. So even if my window, I can't move my window, maybe I can't move my table as much, but this is handy because this essentially becomes the light source after the light shines through it. So I can bring this in nice and close. So instead of me having to move my table closer to the window, I can move this close like that and then just pop my window open, boom. Now I have this big, beautiful soft box, okay? Now the C stand, $120, $100, so that might be a little out of the realm of the budget right now. But at the same time, these A clamps that you can get from a hardware store, Home Depot or Lowe's, cost about 89 cents a piece. And all I have to do is bring a chair from my dining room table over, lean this against the chair, and clip this to the back of the chair. Let the headrest on the chair. And boom, there you go. This cost you about 30, 40 bucks. The chair is already in your house. The A clamps cost less than $1. And now you've got the same thing. You've got this movable, big soft box that you can move over the house for bigger products, smaller products, tabletop, you name it. So newbie, for a budget-friendly option, look for a 5-in-1 reflector. Try to get an off-brand. I mean, make sure it's a photo reflector, but you don't have to get any expensive brand name one because all you're trying to do is get this diffusion material out of the middle of it, okay? And then just get some A clamps and clamp it to what you have around the house, whether it's a lamp or a chair or whatever you got available, or just have like your kid or a spouse or a friend hold it for you, you know, and you're good to go. This particular one is 4 foot by 6 foot, which is nice because it can cover most large windows. But you see how quickly and easily here, you know, right now I'm using the C stand, but if I had my living room, my dining room chair right here clipped to that, you would get the same effect, which is really nice. So for the sake of the rest of the demonstrations today, because I'm trying to keep a track of time, instead of using the window and trying to finagle this, we've got a couple different lighting setups to use. I am going to use this diffusion material as my main light source, but instead of Worrying about the window light cooperating, because someone in the chat already said, Florida window light can be kind of temperamental because we got a lot of clouds moving in and out. I'm just going to use an LED that you can get off of like Amazon or something like that. And I'm going to use this LED as my sunlight. And I'm going to shine it through this, just like I shine my window light through this. I'm going to shine this LED through that. It's the same effect. So if you have LEDs, use them. If you've got window light, use them. But just know that the concept of creating a bigger, diffused, kind of like opaque white material is what really gives you that nice soft quality of the light that we're looking for. So if you see, I'm just going to move this around behind. And now that looks just the same as it did when the window was open. So it's like same. All right. So we've covered the hard light and the soft light. We've covered how to make your light sources look softer, whether it's window light or you're using LEDs. Or if you're just trying to get that soft light without any of this stuff, find a southern-facing window if you're in the northern hemisphere. Anywhere else in the world, just walk around your house or apartment and look for which side of that building is in shade most of the time. Because even on a sunny day, the building's going to have shade on some part of the house, and that's what you're going to be looking for. All right. Next thing we're going to do is kind of a little bit jumping into how to further tweak this setup. So first things first, let me go ahead and bring our light source over here. So we've got our big light. Okay. I've got my sun or my window positioned over here. We've got our beautiful pup. And just so you all know, I don't pick the products when I do these videos. It's always fun because the great folks at Etsy are doing a great, awesome job of like featuring as many stores as possible. So I kind of get packages just start showing up to the office. And it's always fun to see what I get to photograph for the next event. So someone's got a cute little pitty over here with the green collar. I love that. And one nice thing about the tripods or the light stands is that you can adjust the height really easily. So I'm just going to bring this a little bit lower. All right. Perfect. There we go. Now, if you are photographing on your phones, which most of us are, Etsy is optimized for a square crop. So, I mean, why not just go ahead and for the sake of consistency, turn the square crop on your phone? The other cool thing you might see that's going on with my phone right now is I've got the grid up. So if you look, and Julio's got us on the tight one. Can you go to the tight one for a second? There you go. So what I did here is on the iPhone, I just swiped up and I took this and I went to a 1-to-1 square ratio, okay? And then I also, in my settings, I turned my grid on. So it's going to be different depending on what kind of phone manufacturer you have. But the grid, those cross lines are helpful because they allow me to center a product. Or if I'm looking in this instance, I have the top of the coffee mug on that top line. And then when I'm photographing all my coffee cups, our goal is consistency. So if I've got this lined up in that, if you want to go wide shot for a second, now I can really quickly and easily swap my products out and position it to make sure that the product is in the same grid line as the previous one. And then that's how you get that consistency. Every single shot, it's going to be the same size product in the same place. And when you get that grid view on your store online, it's going to have great consistency there. So how you get that grid is you're going to go into the settings on your phone, go into the camera settings, and there should be a toggle to turn the grid on and off. Okay. Next, we want to kind of keep perfecting this photo a little bit. If you look, I'm always about problem solving. Julio was teasing me earlier because I'm a perfectionist, but to be a good product photographer, it takes a little bit of OCD. Let's get my mug here. I've got good lighting on my pup, but I am not loving how much shadow is on that far side. Even though it's a softer shadow because we've got soft light, I want to bounce some light in there. So what I can do there is just use a bounce card. So I could take a piece of foam core like this. Just foam core that you get at the supply store, okay? And we might be a little bit, there we go. Little foam core right here. I'm gonna take my A-clamp, all right? I'm gonna use the A-clamp right there, and I'm gonna use this to come in closer and bounce light. So Julio's gonna switch over to the tight shot here in a second, and what I'm gonna be doing while you're looking through the camera lens is I'm gonna be taking this white reflector, and I have it on the opposite side of the light. So if you were looking at an overhead view, the light is on the right, the coffee cup is in the middle. The reflector is going to go on the left side, and what it's doing is catching the light from the sun or the window and then bouncing it off of this white card and reflecting it into the opposite side of the cup. So instead of having to buy 2 or 3 lights or praying that you have windows on both sides of your house, just get a piece of foam core and an A-clamp. It creates a nice little reflector. So Julio, go to the tight shot for me, please, and I'll show them what it looks like to walk this in. So I've got that there. I've got no reflector. The reflector is in position. I'm bringing it closer. I'm bringing it closer. I'm bringing it closer. And now the reflector is really close. Let me just change my crop here a little bit. Zoom in on my pup. So let's take a picture of this with the reflector, without the reflector. So if we stay on the camera shot, Julio, I'm just going to go between the two. With the reflector, without the reflector. See, I was a little dark. That brings it in, and now look, we have even lighting on the left and right. So just a little foam card with a little clamp makes a big difference there. Now, if I really wanted to make this pop, I can, if you want to go to the wide shot, I'll show them this. I just took some tin foil and put it on my foam card, and it works the same way. And now I'm just going to, with this one, I have to be a little more, I have to focus a little bit more because I have to get the bounce perfect. When you have the white foam board, white is very forgiving. It bounces light everywhere. If I use silver, it's more of like using a mirror. So I have to get the light to bounce at the right angle off and hitting my product. So it takes a little more finesse to use a silver card. But what the silver card does is it gives you more brightness. So say I wanted that shadow side to be even brighter than the white card, I would use the silver, and then I would use my A-clamp. So let's do the same thing. So Julio, if you want to come in tight there. So this is no reflector. This is silver reflector. See how much brighter that is? Now it's perfectly even. All right, so let me just take that picture. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm just going to try to do a comparison of these here. All right. Let's go ahead and put airplane mode on. All right. So I've got my silver reflector, my white reflector, which is more subtle and natural looking, and then, oh, sorry, here we go. White reflector, no reflector, silver reflector, which is the brightest. So that's how you would work conceptually that way. So that's the difference between the white and the silver reflector. If you want to go back to the wide shot, I definitely recommend having them. It only costs you a couple cents. Make them, leave them in the closet, leave them in a drawer, and you've got them whenever you need to photograph there. So next product is going to be something a lot more difficult than a coffee mug. The next product is a candle, a beautiful candle, okay, hand poured, cedar and berry. Let me go ahead and bring that in there. All right. And then Julio, if you want to go to a tight shot for that. For this one, I'm going to go a little bit lower. Now, same thing. If I had a bunch of those mugs, I would just have done this setup, and I would just swap them out. And now with the grid lines and my tripod, every single one of those mug shots would have looked identical. Would have looked so professional. All right, so I've got this in there. Shiny products are a little more difficult because essentially they're a mirror. Okay, so we want to have white light coming from all directions to get a really nice brightness to them. You can do product photography for reflective things like candles and glassware, just like this. I mean, if you look what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in the white card, okay? And I bring the white card in, all right? I'm pulling it out and in. So let me do a before and after shot here with just the white card. So that's my with the light. That's my without the light. If you want to keep it on the phone, I'll just toggle between the two. So there's with my white card, and there is without the white card, okay? So it looks good enough. But if you do this, if your main products are glassware, anything like that, then you're going to want to maybe take this to the next level and use a light box, which you can see really affordably online. Oh, I forgot to call out what we're using here for our background, actually. So Julio helped me put together this sweep. Let me go ahead and show you this before I move on to the light box. If you're wide, guys, you can look at this, and I'm getting that neat infinity effect with that seamless background. Got a quick question. Oh, I see that you zoom in a lot. Is there a loss of quality? A little bit, but nowadays the resolution is so high on these cameras that zooming in isn't really going to hurt you too much. I can zoom in on my phone for the sake of example. or you can zoom in later in post, like you would just crop. It's the same thing as if you were to crop your photo in like Photoshop or on your phone before you upload it later. So nowadays the resolution on the cameras are so high, I wouldn't really worry about losing that. Sure, it maybe takes off a little bit of the size on the top end, but nothing more than if you were just to crop it. But thank you for asking. Yeah, I am zooming in too to make it a little easier for you guys to see the difference today. But what I'm looking at here is this nice seamless background that we've got, okay? You see these in professional photo studios all the time. But so for this, all we did here is we took some craft paper. It's the kind of craft paper you would get at like a craft store, put it on the table for your kids to draw on, make banners out of it, whatever that may be. But we just rolled this out and just found the wall, taped it to the wall, and did it in a way that there was no seam, hence the whole seamless background effect. And then if you get low and you shoot over this way, you get a really, really cool, nice, clean background look. And most of the time, I imagine most of you with these simpler products on white are using software to cut it out, like just to remove the background. This just makes it so easy for the software to remove the background. So the background paper is key. But really quickly, before I totally move on to the next setup, I just want to show you one last tip that works with both this sweep background here and is also going to work with the light tent that we're about to work with. And that is going to be plexiglass. So plexiglass you can pick up at the hardware store or the craft store. You can get it in small increments. You want it to maybe be like a 1/4 inch thick at least so it doesn't break on you. But what I'm going to do is if Julio, here actually let me show you what I'm going to do first, then I'll show you the result in the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip this underneath the product, and it's going to further add to that illusion of the high-end quality product photography we're looking for. We've got the seamless background with the sweep and the paper, and this is going to give us a slight reflection under the product. So if you ever thought, how do they get that cool reflection? Is it Photoshop? Nope, it's usually plexiglass. So I'm going to just put this under the product. So Julio, if you want to go to the tight shot. All right. So I'm going to put it under the product. And then you can see now I've got that nice reflection under there. And now I'm going to add my reflector with the foam core, and I'm going to bring that to the side. And then if you just look at that, check that out. So now I've got a nice, beautifully lit product with the cool reflection under it. And all that was just that little piece of plexiglass. Now, if you're a perfectionist like me, you might see a little line in the background that's bothering you slightly. The way to get rid of that line is to lower your camera angle. So can you just, bring it back to wide, is to lower your camera angle like we have now. So I've lowered my camera to almost be on parallel with the tabletop that I'm on. And you can just add a bigger piece of plexiglass here. Okay, bigger piece of plexiglass is going to allow me to push that further into the background, that seam that we were seeing. So I'm going to put the plexiglass in there, and we're going to set this up one more time. So if we want to go back to the camera angle, it's kind of pushed that farther down out of the way, bringing that in, and there we go. Now, someone mentioned that the background is not pure white. Now, to get the pure white background, we can do two different things. If you want to go back to the wide shot for me. Two different things to get the pure white background. We can add a second light. So this is where I would add a second light, and I would just shine it onto the back. And what's going to happen is when that second light hits my background paper, the paper will turn pure white, and the reflection of that paper will then reflect into the end of my plexiglass and make that disappear too. So if you have a second light available or a bigger window light than I have available to me right here, it can light the background and get rid of your plexiglass and solve all of our problems all at once. Let me show you what that looks like. Let me go ahead and put a second light on the background really quick. All right. I'll just use this little handheld one. So if you want to go to the tight shot, Julio. Perfect. So you see I put that light on the background. You see that? Now all of a sudden my background's going almost pure white. Let me select my product here, okay? And let me bring in my white reflector. And there we go. Now I've got it on that pure white background. And then it's just a balancing game between them, the two of them. So I can kind of get like that nice little there. There we go, the light's all in the background. But to make this easier, if you're going for the pure white background, this is where you're going to want to bring up the light box. So instead of having to finagle all these parts, they designed a product that'll specifically fix these problems. But for the most part, I think someone already mentioned in the comments, what we're doing nowadays is instead of having to get it perfect in camera, there's these apps that will remove the background and put it on a pure white background for you instantaneously. So I wouldn't sweat the details here. I would try to get your reflection and get the light perfect on your product like we have here. And instead of finagling with the white background, I would just use one of those apps to instantly drop out the background and remove it. One free app is, for example, the Adobe Express app is free to download and will remove the background instantaneously. So if I was trying to get all that perfect white light in camera or reflective products like we were alluding to, that's when I'm going to go switch to another product, which is going to be our light box. So we're going to do a quick little product swap out right here. All right. Let's completely tear this down. While I'm doing this, are there any questions that we popped up in the Q&A that maybe I could hop on?
Name of the app that removes the background?
Oh, Adobe Express, or I think it's Adobe Express. There's a bunch of them now. Most of them are free. Also, if you're doing any of your design work or editing in Canva on canva.com, that's a free website that you can upload photos to, and they have a background removal tool in there too. Photo Fuse, there's another one. An oval diffusion? I don't know if the size of the diffusion, you could get a square, rectangle, oval, just enough to cover it. The whole concept is just trying to block any of the indirect light rays from striking your product. So just make sure that your reflector, your reflector is big enough to cover that. That would be the big takeaway there.
Yeah, I think she's on it because it's southern facing.
Gotcha. Oh, if it's southern facing, then you might not even need the reflector because the light isn't going to be coming directly in. If you can look out your window and stare into the sun, then it's direct light. If you look out your window and you can't see the sun from the window, but it's fully bright out, then that's indirect light, and that's that beautiful soft light we're looking for. So you might not even need the diffusion. You can use the diffusion to doubly light it if you want to, but it might not be necessary. Okay, so next what we have here is our light box. Julio might have to play around with the camera settings here a little bit because I keep turning bright lights on and off. We might have to brighten this up just a little bit with the ISO. We'll do that. So what I have here is you can buy light boxes of varying sizes online. I was trying to just buy a smaller one for demonstration purposes, but it didn't make it in time. But what I honestly like to do is I like to build my own like in a pinch. So this right here is just a Tupperware that I got. I don't know how many quarts, maybe 15, 20 quarts or something like that. And then what I did is I just took a poster board that you can get at your craft store, okay? It's got a shiny side and it's got a matte side. And we're gonna use the shiny side to create kind of like that sweep effect that we did with the roll of paper. So I have one piece cut on the inside and I'm just gonna put it all the way up here. It's kind of like a little sweep. All right, and I'm just using clear tape again. So this is in my kit. So if you've got all these things laying around the house in your product kit, you don't ever have to run out the door mid-photo shoot to get them. So that's why I started the workshop with that. Like make sure you got all your little accessories queued up ahead of time. All right, next is so there's my poster board inside my clear Tupperware. All right, and now this is the rest of my sweep that you can see here. And now I've got my foam core that we were using earlier. I had an A-clamp on it. Now I'm literally just gonna wedge it inside of my shoot box here, my light box. So now I have my infinity sweep, okay? And I have my reflector over here. And now I can just simply put a piece of paper over the top, or if you have LEDs and stuff, this, oh, by the way, you're gonna need lights, some kind of lights for this shot right here. When we get into the more complicated light box, this is where you do have to buy an LED or a strobe. But the cool thing is, it doesn't need to be super expensive. Where is our shop light? I had that clipped up somewhere. There it is. Cool. So this guy right here is just a shop light that you can get from like Home Depot or Lowe's for, I don't know, 10 bucks. Mine's pretty beat up. And then you just put a daylight balanced light in here. So if you look at the lights online or in your hardware store, they've got like warm light, cool light, soft light. You're going to want to look for a daylight light bulb that's about 5,000 K or 5,000 Kelvin. And then that's going to give you the same color temperature as the light coming in from your windows. and I can just simply clip this over and put this on the top of my light box, okay? So I could use this right here for demonstration purposes if I wanted to. I might not because the light bulbs get a little hotter than other stuff, but let's take a look. So I can just turn this on. Oh, and I have the wrong light bulb in here. So it's the warm light, and you can just hook it over right over the top like that. So we're not going to use this one because I swapped out my light bulbs and I got the wrong one in there. So I'll hand that back to Julio. Thank you, sir. But let's go ahead and finish our light box. So I've got the reflector, the white reflector on one side. I've got the reflector on the other side here that I can go ahead and wedge in there carefully. Oh, that'll work. Perfect. And like I said, you can also buy these for like, I don't know, 50 bucks on Amazon or something like that. So there's some affordable ways to get these light tents. And there we go. So now I've built my box. So essentially, I'm looking into this infinity sweep, and I'm going to put my product on here right in the middle, just like we did last time. All right. Or I could put plexiglass in here as well to get the cool reflection. All right. Oops, I've already scratched it. There we go. So I'll put my product in there. And now this is where the whole boom arm comes in super handy. If I were using a smaller LED, like this little small LED I've got right here, I could just put this right on top, and that's actually going to do a lot of the work. So if you want to go to the tight shot here, now I set this a little too far back on the table, so let me just go ahead and zoom in. There we go. So that's doing a lot of the work for us already. It's just that one big light up top, okay? So let me take this off. That's one way to do it. Or if you had like a boom arm or something like that, we could get it over the top. We've got this one here handy and available. So I'm just going to bring it in and use it. All right. This right here is the LED we were using as the sunlight. Okay. And I'm just going to quickly fasten it onto my softbox here. And we're going to go the softbox route. Now, these are bigger stuff just because this is what I have in the studio. You don't need an LED the size that I'm using right here necessarily. The softbox, I would recommend having a softbox this size. I saw some people in the chat talking about like a 40-inch by 40-inch box or a 20-inch by 20-inch box. Those are all really helpful. But don't look at all this equipment and think, oh my God, I need all these big fancy equipment to be able to do what I want to do. That's not the case. This is just what I have in the studio. But you could do the same thing with that little LED that I showed you if I wanted to. So I'll just boom that over. Bring it in nice and close. All right, there we go. So you want to go to the tight shot, Julio? You can see how good that looks with the light up top, just another angle. And now if I really wanted to, I can bring this in and get that really bright background. So what I'm doing is I'm bouncing another light into the wall behind. Oh, actually, do we have that little stand that I had earlier? Perfect. Yeah. Grab that. And we're just going to have this coming through the back because we want that background to be really bright. So we're going to try to go that route. Oh, there's my other light. Perfect. We hit it. We set everything up too efficiently. Perfect. There we go. That's what I was looking for. All right. So now we've got our light box. I can just go ahead and select my product, make it as bright as I want it to be. And there we go. We're good to go. So I just would push that there, pull it forward. Okay, I'm liking where we're going with this. Now, the last thing you're going to want to do is with reflective products, especially jewelry. If you've got your light box, I mean, that looks pretty good. Basically, we've got one light shining into the top of the box. The bigger your product, the bigger the product photography box you're going to want to buy. And you're always going to want to have the light up top, okay? Next thing you're going to want to do is this is if you really want to, you can have a background light like I have here, shining against the back wall, shining in that way to illuminate that. Or easiest thing to do, honestly, is save your money on a second light and just use the software to cut it out of the background. So here's a without, and there's with the background light. All right. And then the final thing for reflective material is anything reflective like jewelry and glassware. What you're doing is basically the product is reflecting everything that it sees, okay? So it's bouncing back the white cards that I have on the left and the right. It's bouncing back the light, obviously coming from the top and the back, but the whole front of the product still looks a little bit dark, and that's because the shiny things, if I turn it this way, the shiny part, if you want to go to the tight shot, see how the shiny part is actually reflecting the room. Look at my hand. You can see their hand in the reflection, and my black shirt can be seen in the reflection. So the secret sauce to jewelry and glassware and shiny products is actually what you do at the front. So let me go ahead and show you what that's going to look like. Julio's going to help me create a cool little product here for this shot. So what we're going to want to do is essentially bounce light in the front into this product. But I can't do that because it's blocking the camera, right? So here's where you just got to go ahead and you got to cut a little hole out and you shoot through the hole of your reflector. So this is the magic. Okay, so that's about that height is where we need to do it. So could you hold that for me? I'm going to cut a hole about right here. All right, thank you, sir. So now I've got my poster board with the hole cut in it. All right, I'm going to put it here so that it's reflecting all that light back into the front of the product. So the front part, which is the part we're photographing, actually looks white and bright, okay? So far, we've been using all the other angles. Temporarily, I'm going to come off my tripod here really quickly so you don't wait maybe 5 minutes to finagle that in the right position. And I'm just going to go ahead and look through. So look at how good that looks. So there's our final product, and there's the tabletop setup. So you've got a more homogeneous kind of light. It's not like big highlights and big shadows. We have nice even detail all the way around. Now you can see the label there. What if this was glassware or jewelry? Well, there's no label, it's all reflective. Well, in that case, let me go ahead and just spin this around a little bit more. Try to give myself a little more room for my camera here. Okay, so now if you guys go to the tight shot here, you'll see that it's just the shiny and it's dark, even though we have all that light on it. Well, let me go ahead and place this bounce back again in front. Okay. Where's my camera? So I've got that shot. And then I'm going to remove this. And you'll see that shot. So here is the with the shoot through hole, and here's without. Even with all the great lighting, it still looks dark because it's looking out into this dark room in the dark studio behind me. And here's where it's looking at the nice shiny bounce card. So this is where you could just go in if you wanted to, and I can go to my editing here. I can just brighten this up a little bit if I wanted to. Looks a little bit greenish because this phone's on the way out, so I can kind of color balance it a little bit, whatever I want to do. If I was in Photoshop Express, I could do the background removal and completely cut it out. So if the big takeaway here is, if you're photographing jewelry, if you're photographing glassware, like cups and things like that, if you're photographing anything that's super shiny, you're going to want to go ahead and make or buy a light box. They're super cheap. They're like 20, 30, 40 bucks. Get one as big as possible, okay? And then what you're going to want to do is just put one LED light over top, all right? You can put a second one behind if you want to kind of blast through, but I recommend you use software to cut out the backgrounds. It's perfect, and it'll save you a lot of time and headache. And then you just get a piece of foam core or poster board, and you just cut a little hole, and then you wrap it around, and essentially you're closing the box. So when you buy your light box is going to have all the sides except for one. One side is going to be open for you to shoot through. Well, you're essentially going to close that final side with this and just shoot through that little hole. Perfect reflections. This works great for jewelry. So if you've been struggling with jewelry or multi-sided glassware or anything like that, this is going to be the go-to. You don't have to get as advanced as I do here. I have this set up because I need flexibility for all the different products I shoot. But if you have a specific product, just buy a light box online for that size product, and you're good to go. They collapse down and break down just like a reflector. Makes life really easy. Okay, so now we're going to run over a little bit because now I want to do the flat lays. So we're going to do another transition. If you want to throw me some questions while I'm setting up for the next shot, feel free. Let me get all this out of the way.
Can I use the technique on art with glass front?
Oh, that's a great question. So for the person who had the question on, can I use this technique with glass-fronted art? Go to the Etsy website and find the last workshop I did a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what they called it, or maybe it was like one of the last 2 workshops I did. I talk about specifically how to photograph pieces of artwork, flat things, or flat things of glass. Really quickly though, the summary is the glass on the front of your artwork is going to see whatever light source that you're using to light it. So instead of using one big window light, I recommend using 2 light sources on the left and the right, and look directly at your product, okay, on the wall, get squared up to it with your camera, and then put your lights on either side and just move them away from you slowly until you no longer see them in the reflection. That's the way to go. So the secret to getting even illuminated artwork, flat lays, anything like that, is having 2 light sources and having them off to like 45 to 70 degree angles to the right and left of the camera. That's a really good question. That's hard to do. So yeah, go, if you could find one of the rebroadcasts of one of my previous workshops, I answer that question specifically and give you examples, because that's a very common question.
Ring lights? Thoughts on ring lights and using for products?
Oh, good question. So ring lights were essentially, well, let's think of the commercial usage and application of ring lights, okay? Ring lights are used by dentists to see into your mouth so that there's no shadows, so they can get really in close there. Ring lights are used by forensic photographers to get rid of all the shadow, to see all the details in a crime scene, okay? Ring lights are used in photographing coins, so you can shoot straight down and see all the little imperfections and nicks in them. So what I'm trying to say is ring lights are designed to be kind of like really harsh exploratory lights because they hide all the shadow. I wouldn't use ring lights for most product photography because we use shadow to create the illusion of 3-dimensionality and depth. And your ring light essentially obliterates the shadows so things don't look lifelike. They don't look 3-dimensional. So I would not recommend using ring lights for product photography, honestly. Coincidentally, that's the same reason why people like ring lights for webcams and Zoom calls, because it removes all the shadows so you can't see the imperfections of being human. You can't see our wrinkles, you can't see our scars or anything like that because the ring lights have obliterated the shadows. So ring lights are great for beauty lighting tutorials and Zoom calls. Ring lights are not great for product photography. So I would not recommend them for product photography. That's a good question. That's another common one that pops up.
What about photographic clear, transparent things that don't have light?
Huh, that's fun. But just similar, that's a really good question. So I'm glad you're in this workshop, because what you're going to do for that case is you're going to take an iteration of what we did here, okay? And the most important thing is going to be to have that top light, that back light, so that you're seeing through to a pure white background. And then to get the nice highlights on, say, like a wine bottle or something like that, or like champagne glass, you would want 2 pieces of foam core. So I would basically cut this in half and have them right and left. And those reflections from this foam core here are actually what create those nice, unique highlight strips there. Now, if you're photographing that glassware, you're not going to see anything, right? Because it's all clear. That's where you have the 2 white strips up here. And then you're going to want to take black foam core and have those on the side, the left and the right of your glass product, like that, so that it's creating shadows on the left and right, like the hips and shoulders of your glass clear product. And then the white reflectors up here are creating the highlights in the front. And then the top light and the back light are creating that illumination so it looks clear with a pure white background. So that's a more technical one because the software isn't really perfect at cutting those out yet. Great question. That's where you use the black card, is on the sides. Cool. Those are some good questions, y'all. Okay, so we're done with everything over here. Let's go to the flats. Let's go to flat lays. Getting my trusty foam core. All this stuff can go away. All right, I'm kind of creating some workspace over here because this is going to be our workshop for setting up our stuff for our flats. Not where we're going to photograph the flats. There's a distinction there. Okay, so let's look at what products we're going to photograph flat first. Here's an example. Okay, so this is a really cool product. It's perfectly timed. It's got little pumpkins. It's like a fun little garland, like wreath thing. You could do this a couple different ways. Okay, if you like the wall that you've got, let's say you've got like a wall or a texture on the wall that you like, we could just do this very simply, and I could just use the thumbtacks that we got, and we could just tack this to the wall. Okay, and then I would use the window light with the diffusion, just like we have right here. And I would either open the blinds or I would turn this on. All right, there's our soft light. I would try to get it at a 45-degree angle from the camera. So if I'm here on camera, there's that. I would try to have my window light around my right shoulder about 45 degrees. And then I would just go ahead and I would hang this up, and that's how I would get my shot. All right, so that's one way to do it. There's a second product we're going to photograph today as a flat. And that's going to be this really beautiful ceramic bowl. Okay, this is beautiful, a lot of reflections in it. I want to photograph this as a flat as well. So I could put it on the table, and then I'm essentially standing on the table with my camera up by the ceiling trying to shoot down on this. Or this doesn't hang, so this is more difficult. I could use double-sided tape and just pray it sticks to the wall long enough for me to take the photograph. That's not what I would recommend either. What I'm going to recommend you do is, if you find yourself photographing a lot of flats, is get yourself an overhead rig, and it really doesn't cost as much as you'd think. So there are background support stands that you can find online for hanging background paper or background canvas for photographing like portraits and stuff like that. I've set one up over here, and Julio's going to move the camera. We're going to walk over there, and I'm going to show you how we can use this for our flat setup to save your back so you're not standing on your kitchen table all the time. So let's just roll over here. This I can get rid of. All right, got a mess of a studio here. So what we've got here is, got my lineup of all my beautiful Etsy products. This is my background support stand, okay? So how am I gonna, my light's gonna be there, so I'm gonna set this up like this. This background support stand sets up and breaks down really easily, like this. Boom, boom, goes on a little bag. It's maybe 3 or 4 feet long, hides in the closet, super easy to set up. Now, normally you would set this up, okay, and you would then hang a piece of canvas or like a roll of paper on it. So then you would hang the canvas. It's called a background support system. And you would hang the canvas off of this, and then you would have people pose in front of it with the beautiful canvas draped behind them or the nice white paper behind them, okay? What we're going to use this for is essentially an overhead tripod system. So what I've got here hooked to it is what we call a super arm, and like a super clamp and a magic arm. Super and magic. We're very creative in photography. So let me get one more little piece, and I'll kind of show you how to put all this together. So let me bring our light over here first. Did I block your shot, or can you still see, Julio? Good? Cool. Okay, so I'm going to get my window light set up. So essentially, I've got my window right here. You can see I've got the LED is my window or my sunlight, okay, going through the diffusion panel. So I've got this big window coming this way. I've got my overhead stand here. And then just like, you're going to have to punch in on this one, just like we set up this little situation going on here with our ball head and this clamp, I'm going to remove the clamp from the ball head. And these are steel, so I can throw it. There we go. And what I've got here is a little clamp apparatus. So can you pop in a little bit tighter on this one? So this is a 2-part thing. First part being this clamp up here. This clamp just clamps down on different width tubing. It's called a little magic clamp or super clamp. And then this arm is the magic arm, and it's a tension arm. So when I tighten this here, it becomes rigid. It locks down this arm, so there's no flex. When I release this a little bit, it loosens the joint, so this flexes all over the place. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to attach my iPhone holder that extends out and has those little screws on it. I'm going to attach that to here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is essentially turn this into an overhead crossbar for like a tripod situation. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to just lock this onto the bar. And then I'm going to release the tension here so that I can reposition this in a way that's going to get my camera where I want it. So I'm going to want to get my camera probably, I'm trying to think, like right here. Okay, so I'm going to get in position. I'm going to tighten it down. And while I grab my phone, I'll let Julio zoom in on what this looks like. And now I've got a nice little holder for my phone to shoot straight down. Cutting across. So what I can do now is I'll kind of try to wrap this cable so it doesn't get in the way. I'm just going to lay my phone in here into this holder, and I'm available to shoot perfectly straight down, really easily. So these background stands are very cost efficient and worth every penny, because now I've got this great working area here. So now instead of having to be stuck standing on my kitchen table to shoot these shots, I can be shooting straight down. Now here's the second part of this tip. You ready? Second part of this tip now, instead of me being on the ground, setting all these things up and laying my flat lays and like killing my back and everything, I can be like a normal human up here on the table prepping these things. So let me go ahead and get my wreath. And can you throw me the pins or the tacks? Thank you very much. So now I can be nice, it's upright over here, getting my wreath all positioned how I want it to be. Okay. I'm not going to take too long on styling this. You guys get the process. I could be using my sticky tack or my pins or my double-sided tape, whatever I need to do to get this laid out perfectly. And I'm using a piece of foam core. So it's not the flexi poster board. It's the foam core. So it's got a thickness to it. And I can tack into it. Oh, foam board. Foam board. So I can use the thumbtacks to tack into it to have everything held down. And then I can prep all of these. I can sit on my kitchen table or my dining room table, and I can prep every single product on these foam boards. And then one at a time, just like I'm in a pizza oven, I can just bring them in here, put them into the pizza oven, cook, take my photo, pull this product back out, grab the next product that I've staged, drop it down there, take my picture, onto the next one. And now it's just like we had our tripod, is repeatability. So every single shot looks the same. Every single shot is from the same height, the same composition. I'm putting the products in the same spot. So you have that consistency now across the board in all your photographs, and you're not breaking your back. Prep it on foam core and just toss it in the oven. So I'm going to, perfect example right here. It's going to bring that in. And let me turn off the light on me for a second so you can get an idea of what the window light is doing. So the reason I positioned the window light where I did is because let's switch over to the camera shot for one. Okay. So here's really cool. I have it set in vertical or square orientation. So in this case, I'm just going to maneuver this around until I get it where I want it to be. Zoom out a little bit. There we go. And now what I might do here is, if I were taking my own advice and I had all my products prepped on my foam core, where's that black gaffer's tape? Oh, cool. Thank you. What I would do is, for the repeatability, you're going to have to probably toggle between the wide and the tight shot for this, is I would take a piece of tape, okay, And I would just look, and now I know my frame is perfect, okay? I know what I'm seeing through my camera. If you want to type through the camera shot, I can see the whole product in here. What I can do is take some tape, and I would tape down. This is called gaffer's tape. It's a little expensive, but it doesn't leave a sticky residue on things, which is why we use it in the industry. But I would just tape down the corners here. So if you want to go to the wide shot. So I have my corners, and now I have a template. So every time I have a new product, I just come in here, drop it onto the corner in position, stand up, take my shot, boom, got my photograph, and then I'm on to the next one. Now look at the quality of the light over here. The reason I positioned my window and I oriented the whole product this way is so it looks natural. So it looks natural, like I've got my product, like I've got my shadows coming down. If I had my shadows going up, that would not look very natural. So you want your light to be coming in a downward direction, so the shadows are going towards the downward spot of the frame. So that's a perfect example of that. And just like anything else, if you want to bring in a reflector to brighten things up, like say you think the shadows are a little bit too intense, here's where you can get a different kind of foam core. These are called presentation boards. They're the nice thick foam core, but they have these folds in them, so you can do like a presentation for like a school project. Now what I'm going to do here before we go to the tight shot is I'm going to bring them in and look at how they just work themselves around the product perfectly. So here is all the really dark shadow. Here is bouncing light in that way. And I'm just going to build a second one. So if you want to go to the wide shot, I've just got a second one here. I'm going to bring it right over here. Opposite of my light. I'm just positioning them at the complete opposite end of my light. So my light's coming from this direction. My reflectors are bouncing into the shadow here. If you look down, I've got beautiful detail in there. And you can see in my product shot, boom. Now I've got this beautifully lit kind of hanging thing, or it could be any kind of flat lay product. I could remove this, and then I could swap out my flat lay product here. Now I've got that in there. So let me go back out and take a shot of that. So here's a wide angle of what we're looking at here. So you see how I've got all that set up? Basically just a big bounce wall on two sides with the light coming in from the top. And I would just punch in, and I've got my perfect product shot right there. And then again, I'm not sitting down here styling the whole time. I would just come in, grab this. I did that the most awkward way possible. Here's an example. I would just come in, grab the product, throw it up here, grab my next product, and I'm off to the races. So this is an example of how using your window light or using one of your LEDs, pieces of foam board, the presentation style and the flat style, and a couple pins and stuff. I'm going to pop this light back on here so you don't have to mess with your camera settings too much, Julio. There you go. Perfect example of how you can have this very professional, high volume kind of setup. And even if you're not photographing 30 products, this is just a way to not break your back doing the prep work over here on your table and putting them in there. Now, final question too is some people like, Eric, I've got really small products. What do I do? Julio, could you throw me one of those boxes, please? Thank you. I'll just grab this box, throw it on there. Now I've raised it a little bit higher. I'm prepping my product. Oh, my product's actually really small. Someone was saying, hey, don't zoom in so much in the chat. Well, throw me another box, please. Got it. Other box in here. What I'm doing is I'm raising the product height. I'm prepping my product. I'm bringing it over, getting it into position. And you want to switch to the tight shot? There we go. Perfect flats. And I'm not breaking my back. So this is a great setup. I really recommend that if you're doing flats a lot and you find yourself standing on your kitchen table with your hands on the ceiling, shooting down like this all the time, that you invest in a very cheap, it doesn't have to, it's not really holding up anything more than a cell phone. So it doesn't have to be super expensive or heavy duty. So this is just a regular background support system. Just get these little clamps. That's the key, the little clamps, so you can position your phone where you need to be. And this is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache with your flats, because most of the big difficulty with people getting into the flats is getting the consistent camera angle. And it's also like, what if you're photographing shirts or like sweatshirts or dresses and you got to shoot flats? You need that camera way up there. So here's another example of how you could have your camera, say you had really big products, I can extend the height on these. So see how I can extend the height? If I were photographing dresses or textiles, or if I were photographing quilts, what I would do is I would raise these stands as high up as I could go and get a little Bluetooth remote for my phone. And then I could be down here on the floor styling my big shirts and hoodies and sweaters and textiles, styling it down here, and then just Bluetooth remote, taking a picture with my camera up there, because the Bluetooth remote will control and fire the photo on your phone, and then down. And then here I am, styling again, Bluetooth remote, take the picture, styling again, and then you're off to the races. So if you're using tiny products, use some boxes to get this closer. If you're photographing big products, raise it to the roof. Put your phone on the roof and use a little Bluetooth remote control. And then that's how you would be able to take care of that. So flats are near and dear to my heart, and they're not easy to photograph well or consistently. So I've done my best to try to find all the different ways to make it a lot easier. So that's what I've got for you today. Are there any more questions that I might be able to answer? I think a bunch were coming through.
So you got hanging things that would hang would be an easy way to do a lay flat of like an earring that has to hang instead of laying flat on the ground.
Oh yeah, perfect. So you could even use this same setup for that.
Question, because they can't hear me.
Yep. Okay. So well, the question is, how would you do like earrings or necklaces and stuff like that? Well, if you wanted to do a flat, you could lay your jewelry down and shoot down like this. This also comes in super handy if you didn't want to do the flat. Say you wanted to do the hanging jewelry shots. Well, this is where your fishing line would come in handy, because, oops, I lost my product. I could use my fishing line to help hang this here, okay? And then instead of taking the picture from this angle, let me just remove my phone. I would just remove this, take my phone out, and then I would just simply use this background bar to hang my products from. So that's a really good question, because it shows the versatility of this. So I've got my window light here, okay? I've got this hanging situation going on here. What I would do is I would just kind of put this against a blank wall, like this. Or if you don't have a white wall, just get some of that rolling paper that we had and we made that seamless background for, then tack that to the wall, or get a big enough piece of foam core, or do a white bed sheet and tack it to the wall. Or you have this 5-in-1 reflector now that we're not using the reflective material for. Where'd it go? We're not using the reflective material, we're just using the diffusion. So you could use the guts of this and just tack the white side of this to the wall, whatever you do, just to get the kind of background that you want. And then you would hang your product here. In this case, it's actually like a little garland, so it hangs itself, but I could use fishing line if I wanted to for jewelry, and then hang it here, or have the fishing line droop even lower. And then here I am with my nice window light behind me, or at 45 degrees over my shoulder. I would be photographing this direction at the hanging products here. So this crossbar really comes in handy for no matter what kind of product photography you're doing. Very versatile how you can kind of mix this up. That's a great question.
Why are you using the floor instead of the table with the...
Oh, for the flats? That's a good question. I'm using the floor because it gives me the height versatility. So if I'm doing small products, I can just put a couple boxes to bring it closer to the camera. But because I'm using the floor, I can also raise this up and photograph massive products. I mean, I could do a full trench coat if I wanted to, laying it vertically, raising the bar with my camera on it high enough so the camera can be wide angle and shoot down. So photographing on the floor gives you the versatility. At the same time, if I wanted to, yeah, I could totally use a table. Like if you only photograph small things, well, then I could just put an end table here. Or I could bring this over to the edge of my dining room table, and then no need for boxes. Then I would just have this here with my products that we're photographing on it. That's a really good question. I'm doing it for versatility, but if you know what you photograph, obviously, and it's only small things, yeah, bring an end table. Put different backgrounds on your end table. Have your phone mounted here the same way, shooting down. Then it's going to be the perfect distance. But if you have products that range all across the board in sizes, then you can shoot some on the floor, stack some on boxes, whatever you got to do. It's just the versatility of it. This tool is the big takeaway.
Any tips on photographing principles like drawings and such?
Yes, so the same way you're going to photograph. Oh yeah, so tips for photographing like drawings or art and things like that. You're going to want to have nice wash of even light on them. So in that case, you're going to want to have 2 light sources. You could do it with 1, but if I stand in front of my window light, I might put a shadow on the drawings. But if you look back at one of the other recordings that Etsy has up from a previous workshop of mine this year, we talk about photographing art on the wall. You're going to want to photograph your art the same way. Essentially, you're going to have 2 light sources. So say I have my art on the wall here and my camera's right here, okay? I'm going to want 2 light sources, one on either side, one on my right and on my left. And they're probably going to be around to 45 degrees or almost to 90 degrees, so perpendicular to the wall. So my camera's here. Instead of having my light source here, where my camera and my body will cast a shadow on it, I'm going to have 2 lights, one on each side at the same power. And I'm just going to move them to the left and the right until I no longer get a shadow on my product. So anything flat, artwork, glass, prints with glass in the frames, you're going to want 2 light sources positioned on the left and the right at the same brightness. That's a good question.
I've seen a few of these lampshade photography.
Oh, we covered that too. So lampshade photography, I'm assuming you want to have the light coming from inside the lamp and also illuminating the lamp on the outside. It's hard to do, right? You take a picture of the lamp, everything's black except for the light bulb. So for that, you're going to want to mix regular light, like a window light, or I find this easier with an LED because it gives you control of the brightness. So again, in one of the previous live streams that I've done with Etsy, go back to one of the ones earlier this year, I actually photographed a lamp. So we photographed the light source itself, plus the light illuminating around it. Easiest way to do it is get yourself in a completely dark room, turn on your lamp with the lampshade, compose the photograph like frame-wise and zoom in and everything how you're going to want, and then have an LED behind you, not in any direction, but directly behind you, kind of like a ring light. We don't want to create more shadows, shining into the lamp, and then change the brightness and the color temperature till it looks the way you want it to look. That's a really quick wordy explanation, so go watch one of the rebroadcasts, and I speak specifically to photographing lamps.
Solid question I've seen is dust around photos because you're zoomed in so much and people are seeing dust come up in their pictures. How do you get rid of that?
That's tough. So I would get one of those. Oh yeah. So to get rid of dust, so say you're photographing like fine jewelry or silver or glassware, I would get some white gloves, the white gloves that you would get for handling like a trophy or something like that, or collectibles. So get some of those white gloves for when you're moving the product around, put those on so you're not leaving smudges or oils. And then I would get little canned air. So like the can of canned air you get at an office store to clean off your hard drive or your keyboard, get that and give it a quick spritz, blow all the dust off, put your white gloves on for handling your glassware, silverware, or jewelry to get everything in place. It's a lot easier to clean the set and the product before the photograph than it is to go and remove the dust afterwards. That's a big pain in the butt. Good question. Cool. Okay, so I think we got through most of the questions. Thank you so much for sticking around. We always run over because I want to share so many tips with you in such a small amount of time. If I didn't get an answer to your questions, Etsy's got a bunch of rebroadcasts, including 3 or 4 of my own up there that maybe covered a couple of things we might have not been able to cover today, so check that out. Big thanks for the Etsy studio for always supporting the community and putting this on, and thanks to you all for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot, and good luck, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.